Hello everyone. I decided I'd like to do a part 2 on my Daedric Slaves To Darkness project to show off the rest of the army so far. I have to say, I am incredibly heartened by the response I've had to the first video. The support I've been shown has been incredibly kind, and as of recording this, the first video is at around about 150 views, and that's insane. Thank you to all of you who took the time to watch and listen to me talk about my hobby, and thank you even more so for the support and the encouragement. It has really... It's hard to put into words how proud and happy I am with this, so thank you. Thank you very much. As before, this video is going to be mostly unscripted, so I apologize in advance for my rambles and my stuttering. So the first model I wanted to show off was the Chaos Lord on Karkadrak I got. The Chaos Lord himself, there's really not much to say that's already been said about the previous Chaos Lord I showed off, the one that was converted with the Stormcast Banner Bearer. But the main thing I wanted to think about with this one was what to do with the Karkadrak. So I decided to take a look at Daedric monsters, and it should have seemed obvious at first for me, but I was actually really struggling to figure out what kind of monster I'd go for. And then I remembered that, hey, the Daedroth are a thing. So I took a look at the designs for Daedroth in the Elder Scrolls Morrowind and the other games. And I decided to go with the Morrowind design and try and take inspiration from that. So it has this kind of very brownish, yellowish, green tone to like the main kind of upper area where all the heavy scales are, and then the more kind of fleshy underbelly. And I'm really quite pleased with how this one turned out. I think it works really quite well, and it kind of contrasts quite nicely with the very dark kind of blacks, reds, and silvers of the Chaos Lord and the armor. I also went a bit heavier with the kind of fiery demonic glow on the weapons and the armor. And I stuck with the kind of gaping maw style for the helmet here as well. Overall, I'm really quite pleased with this one. I think there are a few things I could do some adjustments to, but that's more in terms of the painting itself rather than any kind of design. So possibly something to do for next time. So next up we have the actual Ogroids that I got from the big Slaves to Darkness box when it was released on Christmas. For this one, I wanted to lean more heavily into the Dremora aspect. You could see it a bit with the Chaos Chosen I worked on, with the one that's been unhelmeted. But for this, because there was so much skin, I was like, okay, why don't I just try leaning more into that and experimenting a bit. I did this mainly by doing this base coat for the skin first, and then getting some flat red on my dry brush and stippling it onto the face, and then doing the shades and highlights afterwards. And I think it's really worked quite well. It kind of gives this otherworldly, older, kind of destructive beast. Whereas, like, they're definitely bestial, but there's also a bit of that kind of more mortal human cunning and malice behind them as well. Overall, these turned out really well, and I also did some more of the red glow effects on these guys as well for their armor. Despite how monotone everything is, I feel like it worked really quite well. And then for this one as well, there's also the banners to talk about, which I leaned heavily into the parchment style again, where it was like taken from some kind of Daedric scripture or parchment or ritual. And I decided to lean more heavily into the reds, because looking at pages from the Mysterium Xarxes, for example, and also other Daedric things in Morrowind, it's a lot of red designs with some black on these kind of bone parchment colors backgrounds, which really give this it's hard to put into words, like this kind of otherworldly kind of strange fantasy feel, which I think really is symbolic or iconic of Morrowind. So I took a look at those designs and I was like, okay, how do I incorporate this into a banner? And this is what I came up with, which I think really worked quite well. As before, I tried to incorporate the more chaos symbology into it with the arrows towards the middle. But I think most of the chaos work has been done by the sculpted details, like the top of the pole with the giant chaos star and everything. But yeah, I think this works really quite well, and I'm really pleased with this one. Now for the Chaos Knights I picked up as well. I wanted to lean a bit more towards one of the Daedric princes for them. So I decided to lean more towards Azura. So I started giving the knights horses a bit more of a purpley, bluey kind of hue to their flesh. As before, for this one, the unit leader, I decided to give him the Stormcast head and have the faceplate cut off to make it look more like the horrible gaping maw as before. But what I also did for him was I wanted to put a small banner on his lance. Now, of course, he's the unit leader, he's not the banner bearer, but I wanted to give him something anyway, so I found my old High Elf kit from Warhammer Fantasy and took one of the banners from there and stuck it on. And I think that works really quite well, that design. I tried to make it look like it was representing the statue of Azura in Skyrim, standing on top of an Oblivion symbol, and then of course have the upper half of the 8-pointed star on top of it. And I think that also works really well. Like, it's not the whole parchment thing, obviously, but I think in this case it turned out really quite nicely. I did the same thing for the actual banner bearer of the Chaos Knights as well, as you can see here. Going for the kind of purple tone instead of the parchment or the black and red with the Chosen. I think that kind of like deep, kind of darker purple color scheme fit a lot better for Azura. So I think going for that kind of tone with that theme made it work a lot better. Something I did for the plumes and the tails for the horses and the helmets was I gave them more of a kind of blending from blue to purple to red kind of style, to kind of have that starry nebula kind of feel to them. Like how when you look up at a nebula in space, it really kind of blends between different colors, like mainly blues, purples, reds, and other colors occasionally. Just to give them kind of that more kind of not celestial but starry kind of feel, I suppose. So this one, the Centaurian Marshal, this one I was using for a sort of Anvil of Apotheosis character, and the idea I had behind him was that he'd actually be a follower of Hircine, the huntsman. The idea I had floating around in my head is that he used to actually be a hunter in the realm of Gur, and he'd been trying to find more bigger and tougher game to hunt, up to the point of going out and searching for dragon ogres. So when he had decided to do that, the moon of the realm had been turning red. It had been becoming a blood moon. So actually, when he went out to find and hunt down the dragon ogres, he felt this sort of empowerment overcoming him. And when he was successful, he was granted this transformation into a dragon ogre to become a more powerful and stronger hunter. And he thus gave his allegiances over to Hircine, and now takes part in his great hunts. So I decided to try and lean a bit more into the more kind of amber color that is generally associated with beasts and hunts, particularly in Warhammer Fantasy, where the wizards of the lore of beasts were generally called amber wizards, at least in the Empire. I wanted to try and give the chest scarring more of that amber glow. I don't think it worked quite as well as I was hoping for. It worked a little better in the eyes of the face on his armor, but I mean, I'm still happy with it. So of course, him having all these different weapons and the net for trapping. Everything just kind of lent itself really nicely to a follower of Hircine. This model is actually really fun to work on as well. It gave me the chance to try and do something a little bit different with painting skin. To try and make it a bit more leathery, I didn't really block in colors so much as paint lines. So I did the base color of the skin, which would be this grey color. And then for the lighter colors to kind of layer over, I just did lines going across, kind of in the direction the leathery skin would be going. To try and make it look a bit more that leathery texture, which I think that worked really well. This turned out really, really nicely. I'm really happy with how this one works out. Finally, there was the demon print to do. It felt like this model was the sort of combination of everything I had tried and learned from the previous models I worked on, and really tried to sit down, focus in on a Daedric Slaves to Darkness centerpiece. And I'm very glad I saved this one till last. I think everything I had tried, everything I'd worked on, the things I found worked and the things I found didn't work, really translated well onto this one. So for example, around the body, on the armor, I've got the red Daedric glow around various parts of the armor, but not so much that it would overpower the model. And since, it's a red glow, it really contrasts and stands out nicely despite how not faint, but not so vivid it is. It really stands out quite nicely. And also, despite the very monotone black and silver kind of color to it, I feel like everything really stands out nicely on their own. Having different variations of tone. So, lighter grays to darker grays and blacks. And then the difference between the kind of cold silvery grays for the armor, and then the very kind of much more warmer, horrible grays of the horns and the skin. Something else I want to try and do with the Daedric Prince's claws there on his hand was, in Oblivion, around the Oblivion gates, there are these like black spikes with red highlights along the tips that kind of jut out the ground. I wanted to try and do something with that, like not so much make them look like they're bloodied, but kind of have that feel or callback to those spines that grew out of the ground in Oblivion. It was also the first time I really sat down and focused in on working on wings as well. And you can thank a lot of what I learned for wings from people like Duncan Rhodes and Chris Peach when they were still part of Warhammer TV. Even now, actually, as well, with the Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy and Peachy Tips, and when Peachy was in the painting phase. I think a lot of this really works out quite well. I considered also making the skulls be this kind of more muted bone color, but I decided, I'll try and go a bit more heavily on the more bleached bone color scheme, so it's a lot more warmer and, standing out more compared to the rest of the model. I'm really quite proud of how this one turned out. Everything just seemed to fall into place. It even really kind of stuck together really quite well, and the pose turned out really quite nice as well. I really enjoyed bringing this one out onto the table as well, especially the point where in my first game with this army, the Chaos Sorcerer I was using actually ended up turning into the Demon Prince. So I was really glad I could really bring him up onto the table in the middle of the game, and put him through the fire, so to speak. So that pretty much rounds out most of my Daedric Slaves to Darkness force. I'm really quite proud with how everything has come out. If I had to choose a favorite, and this is a difficult choice, I would say either the Centaurian Marshal or the Demon Prince. But I also can't really forget my first, the Chosen, or the Chaos Sword I did as well. The one on foot from the Stormcast, Banner Bearer. But overall, I would absolutely call this project a success so far. As I said before, I don't know when I'm going to expand on it next. Currently, my focus is on the Old World with an Empire army. But if I ever come back to Age of Sigmar, I will absolutely be working on this army again, and bring it back onto the table. I want to say thank you again for the support I was showing on my previous video. That was really heartening and incredibly gladdening to see. The support did really drive me to want to make this video as well, to expand on what I'd already made so far. And it really helped show me how much fun this actually is, making videos about my hobby projects. So I think I definitely want to do more of these in future for my other projects that I've worked on. So I'm thinking next up will be either my Empire army, or maybe just some random other things I've worked on, like some single models that I'd really like to show off. So thank you once again for taking the time to watch and listen to this. And thank you again, even more so, again, for all the support and the encouragement you've given me in this little journey of mine. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.